Greetings, Commanders. This is Soviet Pride speaking in another episode of the map tutorial series. For this particular episode, we will be speaking about another popular 1v1 map on Syrtis Major. Be aware that this is Syrtis Major, not Syrtis Major EP. This only has these three, as you see, and not the additional ones here. Again, I will be going through this episode in the typical format: suggested opening builds, the meta of the map, reclaim points of the map, quirks, areas of interest, common strategies, and of course, if I missed anything, feel free to comment in the comments below. And of course, you'll feel free to read the comments because there are often other players who chip in and give their opinions. So, suggested opening builds of the map. You can go Hydro, 4max Hydro, but it is a very popular variation on this map. It's known as the Crazy Chariot build order, which is the one that I am currently executing. If you decide to just go for a standard Hydro build or an opening power build, they are also viable, but for optimization's sake, this is considered to be one of the better ones. Instead of, I could simply state what it is, but it is perhaps better to simply show you instead. You start with your land factory, you build your 2 mexes, your first engineer goes to the Hydro, and then you use other engineers to cap the other mexes. The whole point of the situation is that you get your air factory out a little later, but your upside is the whole point of this build is that you get your land factories on the ledge, saving time for units to go around, and it also means that you can put extra pressure on your opponent's furthest expansion. Which brings us neatly onto the meta of the map. The meta of the map is often there is high pressure put on the opponent's furthest expansion because it is the easiest to deny. At the same time, there is also the drive to defend it as much as you can. There are technically 3 choke points on the map: the middle and these 2 sides. In reality, these sides are never constant. For instance, if no one claims the middle, units can easily flow through either side here, meaning that the middle is strategically important as it allows you to threaten both sides. While at the bottom, holding this choke point is different from this choke point. For instance, if I, the blue player, held this choke point, these 2 mexes down here are not secure. Whereas if I were to push to here, I could secure this, but then it becomes much harder to do so because it favors the red player to hold this choke point than it is for me to hold it, because I'm going to hold here, I might as well hold here. Other meta of the map. There is no established meta here besides trying to put pressure on your opponent. Some people like to go bomber, and then they'll try to get the expansion engineers, in which case, as you see with most players, you'll send the defending interceptors to the furthest expansion. And where the ACU goes is highly dependent. The reason for this is such: some players will choose to, like I do, go to the opposing choke point and try and control access here to prevent raids into the furthest expansion. Some players will go one further and completely send their ACU down the side in order to gain another 5 mexes or so. Some players like to simply quote-unquote rush the middle, get the reclaim and bug out again. It doesn't matter where you send your ACU on this map, but its usage is quite important. Before going on to the quirks of the map and the importance of the middle, I'll go over the reclaim points of the map. This is perhaps better explained if I simply restarted the replay. Syrtis Major carries a lot of reclaim on it, but not a lot of it is obvious. For instance, if you press Ctrl and Shift, it will not show you the small rocks that are dotted everywhere. So pressing Control and Shift now, you can see the big rocks. But what it does not show you are these tiny rocks. These tiny rocks that are dotted around on these ledges. They are dotted on basically any sheer cliff or hill, they'll be at the base of them. So you have them all the way along here, along these ridges, on the back, and it can add up to several thousand. So you should do your best to get them relatively quickly in order to fuel your economy. Other reclaim points of the map, I'll now go on to the quirks of the map. There is a civilian base in the middle, which is defended by PD, and there's also a quantum gateway. There is one piece of flak, and there is also a radar. What this means is that you can actually fly air scouts over the middle, but anything slower, like a bomber, is not advised. Interceptors can make it, but it is also not advised just due to the fact that, after all, this is flak, and flak does terrible things to Tech 1 air. Nonetheless, if you are trying to scout your opponent to see if they are going for a bomber or any other quirky play, you can send your scout across the middle, and it will be unaffected. Lastly, actually taking the middle, if I can speed this up to show it. Eventually, you'll want to take the middle, just due to the amount of mass available. These buildings, for instance, some of them are worth in the region of 200. The PDs themselves are worth several hundred, this is worth several hundred, and this is worth several thousand. Thus, it is generally a bad idea to simply yield the middle to your opponent. You should at least do your best to contest it. And what most people will do to this regard is build a whole bunch of artillery, destroy the PD, and then, as you see here, Captain Borges is getting the PD to getting artillery to break the middle. And the idea is, you have two choices, either to break everything with artillery and hope that you get there before your opponent, which in this case he will, and so he'll get the majority of the mass.
Commander under attack.
As you see, it's around 2,000 or so, and you have two choices where, depending on where your opponent is. If your opponent is nowhere to be seen in the mid, you have the option of simply stopping the reclaim and, well, basically saving it whilst you spend it on mechs upgrades or more units. Or if you see him coming, you can simply take all of it. So if you're wasting it, he gets none. And here I can show you the importance of controlling a choke point such as this, where I fail to control this choke point. A whole pile of units comes in and causes a great deal of damage to my economy. But I never claimed to be good at this game. I am simply in a position to basically enlighten you as to certain aspects of it. But speaking of certain aspects of it, it is very common to get raided on this map due to the difficulty in controlling certain locations of these choke points. It is an error to attempt to chase these raids. Instead, because your production is based at your home, you should instead, with the units which were bypassed, continue putting pressure, and to take care of the raiding units, either with units of your own from your home base, or better yet, from air. Other areas of interest, these hills are very good for building radar on and anti-air on, as they allow you, as you see here, if you place them well, to cover two choke points. If you upgrade to Tech 2, you can see into the enemy base. Tactical missile launchers can be placed at certain locations that threaten a lot of the enemy. For instance, you place it on the hill from his position, he can simply place it up here, which is relatively easy to control, and he will threaten pretty much all the mass of the opponent. Other common places, you can place them in your middle expansion, and again with the same result. Other places, some people like to put their Tech 2 HQ on the ridge itself, and even a TML back here will threaten the middle expansions. Drops are very common, as we see here, and quite powerful, because the furthest expansion often has a lot of build capacity and is not well defended itself, only the choke points are. Finally, it is worth noting, that although not often used, that you can build on these say, ingress of the map, but it is very rarely used. So to summarize, there is a specialized build order on this map that is highly effective, and if you wish to be effective here, it is recommended that you learn it, as it will give you an advantage, especially if you're starting off with people who do not use it. But in a nutshell, you want to put as much pressure as you can on the opponent's furthest expansion, whilst trying to secure your own. If you wish to focus on this map as a bunch of choke points, you may do so, and indeed it can be effective. There is a fair amount of reclaim around the map, along the base of all of these hills, which you should attempt to get. And the control of the center, and indeed the mass in the center, is fairly vital. And I guess I should give a word as to how tech-based this is. And Syrtis major games do tend to be fairly techy in regards to a lot of economy, a lot of high technology. But you must also strike the correct balance, or else you might run the situation I did, where actually that was just poor decision making and you get run over fairly easily if you over-ego. Again, I cannot teach you these things, you'll have to make your own judgment call, but in general, it is very common to at least press the Tech 2 Mex button a fair few times on this map. And that is all I wish to state for this. If you have other comments, or if you're anything out, or you just want to ask a question, please feel free to leave a comment in the comments below. My name is Sylvian Pride, and this is the Syrtis Major map tutorial. Good luck, have fun.